Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Stierle. And, you know, Bill, I always feel better after I talk with you. And I'll tell you, these days, that need to talk with you is getting stronger.
Wow.
With all the things happening in our world on a daily basis, and it is changing daily. And obviously, I'm talking about the coronavirus.
Sure.
And there is so much uncertainty, and there is also a lack of leadership is the big thing I'm seeing. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, leadership is, we're kind of struggling that because people think leadership is making a strong statement and then getting people to do things. Whereas really leadership takes another languaging skill. That's one style of leadership. Let me just cough that up easy. Do it my way, the wreckage, we'll deal with the wreckage later.
Right.
But the as we mentioned in our last episode around here are 5 things not to do in communication, and here are 5 things to do to restore trust, is we've got to look at our own internal leadership and then our expression of external leadership. Internal leadership is we've got to do something, and I'm holding my hands up by my ears to the voices that keep saying things to us, Tom. There's these different sentences that come in, and then somebody says a sentence from the outside, and then that internal voice takes it and amplifies it. Boop, 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 and it's going back and forth like this. So we've got to stabilize 2 things. The external voices, the things that are coming at us, and then the internal voices, the things that we say to ourselves. Because if we allow a thought called, I am stuck in my house and I can't go out, and allow that thought to ruminate inside our head, 7 days, 14 days from now, it is miserable for us because the thought has already built up this chemical response inside our body, the neuropeptides, and we talked about the 297 different molecules of emotion inside our body. And these molecules of emotions will take us on a spin with a thought stimulus, with a message. So the thing is we've got to get space in 2 different ways. Space between, and create the space between the stimulus and the response. Create the space between what this thought is and how we make meaning out of that thought. And create space there so that it's not such an emotional drain, even though it's an extraordinary circumstance right now. So, in the book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, he talks about, and one of his famous quotes is, between the stimulus and the response, what somebody is doing and how you take it is all the freedom that a human being needs in that space between what they just did and how you just took it. And that allowed him to observe his fellow human beings in a Nazi concentration camp as a psychologist, viewing this and saying, why is this person dying over here and why is this person living over here? One of the primary things is the The people that did not manage the space between the stimulus and response didn't do so well with that. They died quicker. Why? Their stress is higher, their panic, they're worried about loved ones, their ability to know what's going to happen. When is this going to end? What would be a very toxic thought inside a concentration camp. When is this going to end?
Oh, yeah.
And now all of a sudden we're sitting here with a virus, and we have to manage that same process between the stimulus and the response. How do we take it? And the quickest way to get greater distance is to apply empathy for the space in between. So if I have a thought, a tragic thought, when's this going to be over? Is it going to be 4 weeks, or is it going to be 8 weeks? Is it going to go into the fall? Just see how even me just talking through it, there's a little bit anxious and nervousness that could show up in our bodies, because this will immediately have to change our behavioral pattern. And our habit brain, the back part of our brain, does not like to change habits that much. It doesn't. Why? I don't want to rethink that thing I have been doing tragically for a year, 5 years, 17 years, 50 years. It doesn't want to rethink the thought. But this circumstance makes us rethink the thought, makes us rethink the habit. And we have to then create the space so we have compassion for the person or the thought that we just had. The person, what they just said, the thought we just happened in our mind. And there's several different examples. We can roll our sleeves up. So let me check in with you to see how this little monologue that I just, in the informational piece, how did it resonate with you, and what are some of your thoughts about that? Because that allows us to kind of contribute to people.
Sure. So I enjoyed hearing, and I like the idea that there's this space between that thought or statement and action you can take. It allows you some freedom. But I think many people right now are fearful, and I'm going to label this actually something that
Please.
my mother always said to me growing up. She said, "Don't borrow trouble," was one of the cliche expressions, which to her meant don't worry about something potentially becoming a whole lot worse than it is right now. Basically, deal with what we know right now, right? And for the idea of borrowing trouble is taking this thought of, potential in the future going more toward the dark, and bringing that forward right now to be worrying about it when we're not there yet. And a little bit of what you're saying there about you went on about, is it going to be 4 weeks, 8 weeks going into the fall? That is sort of starting to, I think a lot of people are naturally doing that. They're naturally borrowing trouble, and they're fearful of the uncertainty. And I think a lot of the messaging coming from our leaders, quite honestly, is not helpful in this regard. Leadership right now has been behind the 8 ball in acknowledging it, in taking this crisis seriously, in preparing for it, and in taking action. And now that some action is being taken, I think there's concern that the action may be an overreaction, and it's certainly not full of enough empathy and compassion, at least from my perspective.
No, they're missing the empathy and compassion piece. They're doing a thing called problem solving before empathy, and they think, and their belief is, if I just explain enough, and people are going to trust me. That's not the way you get trust. It just isn't. The way you get trust is you got to extend to and give a solid line of empathy in the direction of the fear. Could you be feeling fearful because you really need some protection and you would like some certainty from me, the person will say yes to that. What would certainty look like? Can you give me some clear numbers? Great. So there's a narrative that's needed for protection. There's a narrative that's needed for certainty. And there's a narrative that's needed for clarity about what that looks like. Then you might get a shot at having a conversation about what truth is.
Well, so now where I think the current administration and how they're trying to exhibit leadership, where that's going right now, is they've retreated to their safe space of money. Again, the business leader thinking that marketing wins all, sales cures all, money ultimately fixes things. Trump has been working with Steve Mnuchin to come up with a stimulus package for the economy and saying, hey, they're going to get everybody checks like within 2 weeks. Here's again like the sizzle and the dopamine hit, right?
Oh my God.
That they're trying to do. You've seen all this, right?
I have. That messaging is so upsetting because you're just saying a statement. It's a very binary logical things. Steve Mnuchin, is going to give you a check. Instead of, here is the path for you to get the check. See,
or I mean, even that. Here are the problems we're facing as a company. Here are the problems we're facing as a country, and
right, exactly.
A lot of you are out of work because you can't wait tables at restaurants right now, and you can't. A lot of retail jobs are gone. In a hurry here, or at least, if not laid off, just hourly workers, no work. And so rather than exhibit leadership saying, we're going to get everybody back to work in this amount of time. You're going to have this finite amount of time that you're out of work, and then we'll get everybody back to work. Or something else. Instead of dealing with the real issues that result in people being short of money in their bank account, they're going straight to, well, we need to just print more money and get everybody money and checks in their hands right now. And I think that just contributes to the fear and uncertainty.
Absolutely.
Instead of solving a problem. Because, I think a lot of people right now are like, well, what good is it going to do to me to have $1,000 check in my account when I can't buy any toilet paper at the store anyway?
Or where's the second $1,000 check coming from? Where's the third $1,000 check from? Is this going to be regular? Is this going to be just a one-time payment? Oh, I'm just now I'm having flashbacks to the Bush tax cuts when he made tax cuts, and he sent everybody a check for the tax cuts. It was great. I got a check in the mail for about $300. I was going like, oh my gosh, that was it. All of that just generated this.
Right.
This is all.
And all it does too is amplify to me, proportionalize the reality of, well, that $1,000 check isn't going to cover my rent entirely, or maybe if it does cover your entire rent, if you live in a place where that would cover it, it's going to maybe cover it for 1 month, but not the second month or third month. I mean, to me, again, it just highlights all of the
tragic messaging
concerns, right?
Yeah. Tragic messaging. So we've got to have empathy about truth here, which is because what they don't know, what Trump, Mnuchin, and the entire crew, and I'm not saying the Democrats are all that much better, but at least they're like a third of the way there. Their messaging is got to be one that is something that is the person can believe it without having doubt or skepticism, those specifically two emotions, to show up inside the body. Because as soon as doubt and skepticism shows up in the body, they stop listening. We stop listening, Tom. We don't believe it. So doubt and skepticism are very, very important emotions for us to experience so we can get the space between the stimulus and response. And when he said that thing, you're going to get a check in 2 weeks, I'm going like, you guys can't even get yourself out of a brown paper bag, for God's sake. Like, you and him, you two guys, just because you're going to throw money at us, that's going to, make it work. And they're not going to look at money that is going to be stable. They're just going to be money in order to make their agreement that at least we gave you money. It's like throwing a piece of scrap to somebody, or, feeding a homeless person for one night. It's like, great gesture, but you're not working at the systemic problem. You're not stabilizing the economy. Mnuchin could have nailed it by saying, whatever income that you're making right now within a guideline is we're going to stabilize that income for the next 6 months. Whatever bills you need to pay we're going to match that. Immediately everybody would have calmed down, because he would have been talking about not money anymore, the need for stability. Whatever your last paycheck was, we're going to stabilize that paycheck. Now, that's unsettling because, the person making $250,000, that's a bigger paycheck to them. And then you need to say within certain parameters. But
right.
See, there's within certain income levels, these are going to be, and then all of a sudden it's what income levels? It's like, yeah, if you're 250,000, you're SOL, right? If you're 250,000 above, but really it's, hey, if you're $1 million above, you ain't getting any money, or whatever, or if you're at this, whatever place you're playing, no, but all the other folks, it's basically, it's kind of weird to say this, but they need to stabilize 50% of the population is who they need to stabilize, and they don't want to do it. They most certainly don't want to do the bottom 10% or the bottom 20% they don't want to do, because they have all kinds of judgments around that, as well as the immigrants that are playing in that space. It's like, oh my gosh, you're bailing them out. Who are you bailing them out with? All the people that you told them that you're not going to bail them out, you got to bail them out just to get these people off the streets so that the virus doesn't take place, as well as the economy is just like, there's a level of free fall. I just, what was the last financial guidance piece I got? This will trigger your brain, by the way. Watch your emotions when I say this. Watch how your emotions will change, because this will tell you how much space you have between the stimulus and response. Watch how weird this is. You ready?
Ready. Financial
advice. Bill, you need to go into all of your automated payments and shut all of your automated payments off, so there's no more automatic withdrawals from your accounts. Look at, oh God, your eyes just went sideways, man. You're going like, wait, what? Because the money's just gonna go out, but that doesn't help you with the money coming in. You see what happens is that,
right.
And it's like, well, make them wait. Of course, that's the disaster of a free fall economy, is that you're not allowing money to come in and go out and come in and go out and run your life within that budget or within that acceptable parameters that we do, right?
Right.
but notice watch your body, unsettled, right? Am I guessing that right?
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit of nervous, maybe, possibly anxious. It's like, is it going to get that bad in 6 months that I wish I would have listened to Bill's advice to shut off my automatic payments so I could hoard the money, like the toilet paper, right? I got to
Right.
keep the money on this side and not let the automatic money going this side going the other side. Because, I mean, there's people right now that are thinking to themselves, I cannot make my housing payment. I cannot make my house payment. I cannot make my payment for my rent. Now, there's building owners that are going like, oh my gosh, who's going to bail me out for this income when so-and-so or half my residents don't pay?
Right.
How am I going to make my payment to the bank? And what's going to happen to my reserves? I'm just working the housing market right now, let alone food, restaurants,
Yeah.
bars,
Oh my gosh. Restaurants
retail.
are going to happen first. I mean, it's terrible. I actually, the night before we're recording this, I went out and got takeout here in Southern California. All the restaurants are closed for dine in, but they're allowed to be open for takeout. I'm the only person that went in to this, that was in this restaurant at the time I was there, nobody else. And even though I made a nice order and I gave them a large tip because they're there making food and trying to make a living, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be generous with the tip. And I'm just like, how long are they going to be able to do this and stay open at this
Yep.
small level?
Yep. Very,
And
very, very troublesome. And
very
that's not
troublesome.
getting to the waitresses that have been laid off, the busboys that are laid off, and those kinds of things. Yeah. It's not good.
One of the things, and just sort of a public service announcement here for our listeners, anybody listening, it was, I think, a brilliant idea I heard first from my sister in Colorado, who lives in a rural area, and there are some small family-owned restaurants, not these big chains or anything like we have a lot of here in Southern California, and people in their community are going out and buying gift cards from these restaurants and not cashing them in anytime soon, but just buying a gift card to help a restaurant get some more revenue,
Right.
and try to hopefully be able to make whatever minor ends meet are necessary to stay alive, or stay in business here. Alive was the wrong choice of words, but to stay in business. And I thought that was a brilliant idea, for those of us that might
Sure.
have the money and be able to afford to buy a gift card and not
Sure.
need to get immediate value for it.
Yeah.
I think, it's going to take compassion like that to help
Yeah.
certain businesses survive. So,
Yeah, those are the support elements, but all of those folks have got to still talk through them feeling anxious, nervous, worried, scared about their need for certainty, trust, stability for the financial security that's not in place. And certain beliefs work, but if we're not talking about stability and financial security, then what winds up happening is any kind of money fix will only be temporary. If you don't
yeah,
narrate it from a place of stability, the person's going to feel nervous, anxious, worried, scared. You've got to provide leadership at this point. It's got to provide stability narrative over 6 months. Stability narrative over 6 months. Because the numbers in China, the way it looked, is when you have a society that has the ability, doesn't mean ours does not, it just means theirs did, build a hospital in the smallest amount of time and quarantine and put in place all of the safety issues needed in order to stabilize the pandemic. And a country like Italy that did not provide that and did not have the governmental bandwidth to do that, and our government not taking the actions having some similarities to what China did. You don't have to do it the way they did it, But a similarity would be buy a hotel, convert it into a hospital / care place, and then just stick your people that you need to watch that are infected but not, serious, in a spot, deliver them food, and call it a day. I mean, they have to sweat it out literally for the next 14 to 21 days.
Yeah. Well,
And
now,
so, yeah.
one of the things I'm wondering, Bill, in this comes into, again, I mean, I think it says something about leadership or lack thereof, but it also comes back to some of our things we talk about in the past, especially with labeling and diagnoses. Have you seen how the president recently has been labeling this the Chinese virus?
Yeah, it's disheartening in order to personalize it or assign it to. And my request is people just convert it and don't address it at this point. I would just convert it, and so like he says, the Chinese virus. We get to say back to it. It's like, so the coronavirus from your perspective is, you just relabel it right on top of his label.
Yeah.
Don't even acknowledge the dog whistle and the racism that's in it. You've got to manage the stimulus. Regrettably, the press doesn't know how to do it. They're picking the wrong through line, and it's a distracting through line.
Yeah.
Because he said it. Somebody called him on it, and it gives them the opportunity to say, "Well, that's where it came from." In other words, I'm arguing from a partial truth, but I am not being a leader that's inclusive.
Right.
And I'm assigning blame to something outside myself, instead of doing what I really need to do as a leader, is step up and face the problems and keep my language there. They're still, regrettably, using these distraction languaging techniques in order to create the us versus them mindset, instead of going like, this is not the time to, whether you're, for LSU or Alabama, come on now. It's like, you're still got to remember what game you're playing here.
Yeah.
The game
absolutely.
is protection, certainty. How does safety take place? How does clarity and information take place? You got to stay tight to it. And so, in communication, empathy, and the way I'm defining empathy, Tom, and I know we've done this several times, is that whenever there's a feeling word attached to a need word, that's when empathy takes place. So you're feeling scared because you need some certainty. And that is the thing that allows us to talk about certainty and not talk about scared. Our brain will naturally shift to the need once it's attached to the feeling. So if I'm feeling doubtful because my need for truth isn't met, I then have a greater access to pursue truth. And my doubt disappears like the wind, because I really self-connected to myself. Because if I feel skeptical because my need for trust isn't met, well, then I'm going to talk about what trust looks like. Because that's the thing that's going to get rid of skepticism, not, oh my God, I'm skeptical, or you're a liar, need for truth again. I don't need to call the person that. I'm just going like, that's not my version of truth. That's not the way truth, the way I see it. You can try to sell it to me a different way, but that's not the way I see it.
Right. Well, I agree with you. The needs are the key.
Yeah.
And it takes a certain amount of empathy and compassion inherently to be able to speak to those needs and provide what people really need right now. And regrettably, the president does not have. I mean, my way to say it would be, he doesn't have an empathetic bone in his body, is sort of the cliche I would use, which maybe is not helpful, but he doesn't have not just the skills. I mean, if he had enough of the skills, he'd be faking it at least. and doing better than he
Right,
is now.
right. No, it's just awareness is actually the bigger need that you're pointing out, is that when somebody's brought up in an environment, a wealthy environment, that there's no need to practice care for another person because you're focusing on what the goal of the monetary income is, and you're noticing how much respect people give you for the money that you or your family or has. Well, it's disheartening because then you're not looking as people as people. You're looking that as them as commodities, and that's the current his current narrative is people as commodities, not as human beings going through something. And so the level of shallowness that sits there is very unsettling, just really is. So that's the one that's really the hard part about this.
It's very hard. And
Yeah.
it's in moments like this that you really discover, whether you believed it in the beginning or not, where you discover what kind of leader you got in the last election.
Yeah, this is the leader they got. And for some of the folks that are on the are that are closer to the center, not the ones that have already have kind of like taken the hook, line, and sinker. They're on the propaganda narrative and they're stuck there because of whatever it's called, a moment of investment. The moment that the thing that they're invested in. I know one person is invested in Trump because of the abortion issue. That's it.
Right. And you're not going to
And
move them off of that point, and nothing else
yeah,
matters. They're going to
no,
stay there for that one issue.
no, that's right. Instead of productively really working at the abortion issue, which is, if you want to get rid of the abortion issue, it's not so bad. You just got to institute. Now, this is when it gets unsettling really quick. Institute sex education earlier, inside the system. When a sex education piece is done thoroughly through 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, the numbers just drop. The numbers of unwanted pregnancy just like completely plummet. But they don't want to talk about that either, because then you got to talk about sex, which is very unsettling for people because they don't, even in their adult life, don't talk about sex. They don't say, how was that for you? They're not doing that question. It's like even most married couples aren't checking in every once in a while. You may want to check in, see if somebody's checking out. There might not be as much fulfillment as you think there is. You got to check in, which is a little dangerous, because then that opens you up to, you've got to make some changes. Again, unsettling. That's the scary honesty piece on this. So I am getting calls and I am providing people support. I am doing some online webinars and trainings right now for people to jump on and to practice these skills in real time. I'm starting to do that so that during this downtime that we're being able to handle the space between the stimulus and response, that we're able to take our internal and external conflicts and be able to provide empathy and provide a new kind of stability during this new normal. I mean, it's the new normal is, don't go out so much. You still have freedom. Go for a walk. Doesn't mean stay in your house. It just means don't go near people.
Well, don't go near
be in
people.
groups.
Don't go to school. Don't go to concerts. Don't go to sporting events. I mean, none of these things are happening anymore. So, I mean, there's an awful lot of changes. And
that's right. Millions of dollars of changes. Millions. I haven't seen there was an article that crossed. We'll have to pick this up around the financial piece, and you and I, as many Americans went through the real estate crash, and
yes,
and that our real estate crash affected the rest of the world. They weren't even a part of it. All of a sudden, we stopped spending. They were screwed. We didn't have resources to spend. They all of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute, what happened to our contract? I was making 200,000 of this unit, and now you only 100 of them. It's like, I mean, you know more about this than I do because you spent time in that space.
Sure. Yeah. No. It's interesting how there's going to be major shifts, not only in manufacturing in terms of the things that are needed for direct response to this health crisis, like, masks and gloves and,
Sure.
vaccines, medicines, treatment, ventilators. The medical industry is, being asked to retool and make different things and prioritize different things. Consumer goods, yeah, that whole market's going to tank, and the factory of the world in China is going to slow down and suffer significantly as a result. Retail, was all here's the interesting thing is, and no one's really writing about it yet because the big story is the health crisis, but what's going to happen to retail America that was already struggling.
Right.
The physical chains of retail stores and restaurants and all these things. There are many that are not going to recover.
Not going to.
And our economy is fundamentally changing in many ways. Amazon probably continues to get bigger faster and stick a fork in a lot of other retail businesses that are now going to be struggling. And that's why right now Amazon is hiring for 100,000, immediately 100,000 new delivery workers because there are so much. And actually, that's something we've noticed because in our family, we're big Amazon shoppers on a regular basis, have been for years. And now just ordering something normal that we would order, like dog food, for instance, we order off Amazon. Now, it's not that there's a shortage of dog food by any means. Plenty of stock available of dog food. No problem. Hasn't been a run on it. But can't get prime delivery on it in 2 days. Right now, it's going to take 5, 6, 7 days to get delivery, not because of a supply problem, but a delivery capacity problem.
The new bottleneck.
Yes. It's very interesting.
So we're going to have these different communication nuances to go through, the situational consequences that are showing up in the new normal. And again, the space between the stimulus and the response is, you're noticing that your habit pattern is going to shift more into things that you're familiar with, but you're also going to adjust your time perspective, and then the habits that come with that. It takes 5 days to get this, so that means I need to order at this time earlier. So now the habit pattern isn't go in the store on Friday. The habit pattern is, which day do I sit at the computer and do all my ordering or automate my ordering? And which day do I check that? And then it's all there by Friday, and the retail piece is completely out of the mix. I just signed up for, it's called imperfect fruit, or it's an imperfect food. So it's all these things that have been mislabeled, these things that are pieces like the carrot didn't grow straight. So it's a crooked carrot. Well, it can't go in a retail place because people want to see a perfect looking carrot. This is an imperfect vegetable. So why do I care? I'm cutting the damn carrot out anyways. And just because it's not straight, it doesn't mean it doesn't taste any different. It tastes just the same as the straight carrot. It's just a little crooked. It's got a little knob on it. For God's sake, whatever.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So it's a shorter stem. Oh, something's got, it's like it's smaller than the other one. Whatever. It's like, so we are taking steps in the new normal to meet our needs for certainty, whether we would like it or not, meet our need for stability, whether we like it or not. And our habit patterns our habit patterns then are able to adjust to, something that, tends to go and will tend to go better. So,
Wow.
anyways, so the next time I think, Tom, I think maybe it might be beneficial for us next time to talk about the family dynamics and the family interactions, whether it's relationships or parenting, is how do we communicate compassionately in a healthy way when our child says, but Dad, is it okay to go outside and play? They're thinking in their mind they can't go outside. They're the ones that their safekeeping brain creates a myth about things. If you think about it, this is the first time in multiple generations, I would say 2 probably, that there's ever been any kind of request to do this kind of isolation in our country. Other countries maybe, but I'd have to know. But it's been not in any time in my life if I've ever been asked to stay at home by the government or anything. Nope.
Yeah, no, I don't remember that either.
Nope. So it's a first. Same as the housing market. First. Same. That level of instability that regrettably are caused by the inactions or actions of others in our direction as a society, our new cultivation of community has to change. So because we can't, there is no planning for stable communities as there once was in the 1950s, post-World War II, was the planning of stable communities. That was a plan. Here's what a stable community looked like. Here's where the community center goes. Here's where the activities take place of that community. There's a church here. There's a this here. There's a grocery store here. There's a this here. And that's called planning a stable community. We do not have that kind of planning going on right now very much.
Yeah, it's the opposite. It's reaction now. So
reactionary,
okay.
Yeah, no.
Well,
all right, Tom. Well, more to come. This has been a great discussion. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.